My name is Jordan Jeffries James. I am the Family Consumer Science Agent in Rockingham County. And so I work for NC Cooperative Extension. So basically what I do in a nutshell is teach nutrition education, food safety, healthy food prep, as well as canning and preserving, and physical activity as well. So I'm kind of have my hands in a few different pots, really promoting, a well-rounded lifestyle. So that's really what I do in a nutshell. You have an agent like me in every county. So if after this presentation, you feel like you want to get involved in some extension programming, feel free to reach out to, if you're not in either Rockingham County or Guilford County or wherever, reach out to the agent that's in your county. All right. So today's presentation is going to be on healthy swaps. So let's go ahead and dive right in unless we have any questions. Everybody good? All right, let's go ahead and get right into it. So let me move my screen over so everybody can see, or so I can see, excuse me. So just to give you a quick rundown of what we're going to be going through. We're going to start with the healthy choice continuum. So I want to kind of give you the idea or help explain the idea that, healthy eating can be on a spectrum. So, there are things that are less healthful for us, and there are things that are more healthy for us, right? And so ultimately we want to move towards the healthiest choice, but, there's incremental steps that we can take to get a little bit healthier, a little bit closer to that healthiest option, right? So there's a continuum there. The next thing is talking about changing your protein. So the healthy swap here would be finding healthier protein items for you. So we want to get rid of some things that are, highly processed or a lot of red meat. So we know that those are connected to negative health outcomes. So we want to make sure that we, try to promote a healthier protein option if we can. The third thing is to swap our fats. So we're going to talk about what are considered the healthier fats, what we need to get less of, what we need to be mindful of, how much we're consuming, and then just, help promote the idea that it's not necessarily the fat that's, negative towards our health, it's the type of fat. And then talking about making sure we make our grains whole. So we want to make sure that we are consuming more whole grains, get them closer to to their whole form. And then varying our vegetables, should be fruits and vegetables. So varying those, make sure we're getting a variety there. And then switching out our salt and sugar, and flavoring our foods with things that aren't going to add a lot of added sodium or added sugar. And then making sure we read our labels, because ultimately a lot of healthy eating comes down to knowing what's in our food and what we're putting in our bodies. All right. So first step, the healthy choice continuum. So the first thing to note is that healthy eating is on a spectrum. Like I said before, out there, healthy eating is on spectrums. Like I said before, there are things that are less helpful for us and things that are more helpful for us, right? So, we want to get towards the healthiest end of that spectrum if we can. But ultimately, if we move you from eating things that are super highly processed to something that's less processed, that's a win in my book. Sometimes it's more feasible, especially for your lifestyle and what you have going on in around you, and maybe budget, stuff like that, maybe more feasible for you to get a certain item versus another one, right? So here what you see on our screen, we have our, examples of foods in different forms, but you can see on the screen that these are probably not, what we want to go for. If we're thinking of, eating super healthy, you're not thinking about eating pie all the time or eating candy nuts or fries or red or highly processed meats. So we want to make sure that, this is probably the other end of the spectrum. We want to get less of, right? So a step up right here, this is like a step towards the healthier direction. So taking little steps in the healthier direction can be easier and more feasible than completely changing the way you eat. So this may not be this may be a less drastic change that you can take, but this is the far cry from the previous page, right? So on this page, we have canned fruit. It may be in syrup, but at least it's not having as much sugar as maybe a pie, right? And if we want to take a step further, then maybe we go for a canned item that has, it's canned in water or canned in its own fruit juice instead of a syrupy mixture that has a lot of added sugar, right? And so with our nuts and seeds here, we have a granola bar that has some, rolled oats. It has our nuts and seeds in it. And it's better than having candy, straight candy nuts like a peanut brittle or something like that. However, this granola bar is probably going to have some kind of sweetener added to it. So maybe some honey or whatever, right? So it's not the best option, but it's way better than the candy nuts that we saw on the previous slide, right? And then our vegetables, right? So on the prior slide, we see that we have fries. Now, potatoes are a vegetable, right? But as soon as you fry them, right, they become less helpful for you, right? And then ultimately, there are more nutrient dense options that we can choose. So you can try canned food, which is a great option. Everybody looks down, or not everybody, but some people look down on canned products, but they can be a great and helpful option for you. You have to be mindful of, added things like sodium and stuff like that. But canned vegetables are great. And that's ultimately, again, moving up a far cry from having a lot of, fried, either tater tots or fries or whatever. This is miles better than those, right? And then meats. So in the prior slide, we had our red meats. We want to kind of consume a little bit less of those if we can. All right. So grilled chicken is a better option for you. So again, moving up on the spectrum, but not completely changing, the way we're eating can be, that's the first step. And then, so this would be like the farthest end of the spectrum where these are the healthiest options we could find, right? So we have fresh fruits and vegetables, right? We have our nuts and seeds that don't have any added sugar or anything like that in them. Vegetables, right? And then a healthy fatty fish. So all of these maybe that's the far end of the spectrum. Maybe that's not something that you're comfortable getting to yet, right? So there are foods that are better for you than others, and we should eat these more often, but making more realistic steps for yourself and your lifestyle is very important. So be mindful of where you're at and what you can change and what you can maintain is the main thing. So we don't want you to make changes that aren't something that you can make or incorporate into your lifestyle in the long term, right? So if you have trouble, preparing a lot of a lot of meals for yourself where you have a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, maybe the canned option is better for you. Nothing's wrong with that. Nothing's wrong with that. Just be mindful of how it's prepared and what's added to it, and just know what you're putting on your plates. But canned food can take the place of a lot of those fresh fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. Frozen as well can take the place of a lot of those fresh fruits and vegetables as well. So those are great options. So just know where you're at on that spectrum and try to just move up a little bit along that spectrum to see if you can find more healthful options. Do you have any questions so far?
Don't see any in the chat so far.
All right, cool. Sounds good. And just stop me if you see any in the chat, so I'll try to answer those as I go, so I don't just pile up at the end. So now the first thing we're going to talk about as far as our healthy swaps is changing your protein. And I want to preface this, and I'll harp on it again at the end. A lot of the information that I'm pulling for this particular PowerPoint is through a program called Med Instead of Meds, which is the NC State Extension program. And so at the end, I'll talk about a little bit more, but a lot of the concepts I'm going to be speaking on are from that actual curriculum. So at the end of this program, if you're interested, again, I encourage you to reach out to your local extension agent to see if they can present this program in its full series, in its entirety, to whatever community group that you may have. So it can be out wherever, it be in a church setting, it be in a whatever community setting you have. You have a group that'd be interested, let us know. All right. So changing your protein, again, like I said before, it's on a continuum, right? So we have things that are less healthy, you want to eat a lot less of. So our highly processed meats, our higher fat meats, high fat dairy. And as we move along, we see things that are incrementally better for us. Okay. So if you're on the far end where it says eat less, and all you're eating on a day-to-day basis for your protein items are bacon, salami, like highly processed turkey products, stuff like that.
Bacon.
I know. Bacon, look, excuse me. Again, everything in moderation. So I'm not telling you to completely cut it out, right? Not completely, but as much as possible, remove that from your diet and replace it with other things, right? So again, swap it out with something that's more along the spectrum towards eat more, right? So instead of the highly processed meat, maybe you move up towards dark meat poultry, and then maybe from there you move up to white meat poultry. Maybe from there you add in more beans, nuts, and seeds, right? So all this is moving you across the spectrum, okay? So in the Med Instead of Meds curriculum, they say that changing your protein is arguably the most impactful way you can improve your diet. Because a lot of the proteins we eat as Americans, are highly processed. Think about fast food culture. Like all the foods that we eat, they have had a lot of things done to them prior to them being put on your plate, right? Where it's added preservatives, sugars, sodium, a lot of things that are added, fats, that we really don't want much of, want to get less of, but they're in a lot of those highly processed meats, right? And then as you move along the spectrum, you're getting more towards our wholer form of food. So we have more control over what's in the food, right? So not only is it less processed and we have less of those additives, but we also have more control on, what we put in it, right? So we can put stuff in it that we want to flavor the food or, make it taste better, improve the texture or whatever, but that's our choice. Like we have more control over that, right? And
Can
ultimately we
you
can make it taste the way we want
identify
to. I'm sorry?
what higher fat meat would be? Like if somebody's like, what's a higher fat meat?
Right. So a good example, if you ever went to the grocery store and you go to uh the ground meat section, right?
Mhm,
You can look and see the ground meat and it has like those little percentages on it, right? And so the
mhm,
percentages, like it says like 80% lean, 20% fat, right? Or 90% lean, 10, it has little percentages on it. So a lower, for example, with that, a lower meat fat or lower fat meat, excuse me, would be the one that's like 98% lean, 2%
mhm,
fat. So that's a good example of like a visual that you can look at too. But your higher fat meats would be like your dark meat poultry. Think about your steaks, any kind of meat that has a lot of marbling in it, those little fat strips in it, right? Those are going to be your higher fat foods. And I want to also speak on the fact that, a lot of the things on the eat less side, was higher fat meats, we're particularly talking about those. So with our fish and stuff like that, those we want more of the fatty fish because they are healthful fats, they are unsaturated fats. And we'll talk about that a
mhm.
little bit more later. So think about your processed meats. Bacon is going to be a high fat meat. A lot of your steaks, if they like have a lot of marbling in them, are going to be that way as well. Things like pork can be high fat, but you can find leaner cuts of pork too. So if you consume pork, try to consume some that has less fat in it. And yeah, so those would be your higher fat meats. And so we'll talk about how you can, also look at like the packaging on your foods to kind of understand how much fat's going to be in those as well. But yeah, and continuing on though, you also want to be mindful of high fat dairy products as well. So you know, if we're going strictly the Mediterranean style of eating, they don't really consume a lot of dairy. But if you are consuming dairy, try to choose the products that are either reduced or low fat, right? Because the only difference between the high fat and lower fat dairy is just the fat content. So you're going to get the same amount of calcium, vitamins and minerals, protein, carbohydrates, all that's going to be pretty much the same unless you have like added sugar in it, obviously. But the only thing that really changes between those two products is the fat. And that's going to be saturated fat, which we're going to talk about. And that's the fat that we want to get a little bit less of. So again, on a spectrum, ultimately, let's move you further and further up the chain towards the eat more side, which would be our nuts and seeds, our healthy fish, white meat poultry, stuff like that, right? All right. So what do we want to limit? We want to, again, limit the highly processed meats, higher fat meats, dark meat poultry, high fat dairy. It should be high fat, excuse me. And then our healthy alternatives would be beans, nuts, and seeds, healthy fish and seafood like our salmon, stuff like that, white meat poultry, eggs, fat-free or low-fat dairy, and then our lean meats. And then why? Of course, limiting highly processed and higher fat meats will greatly reduce your intake of saturated fats and unwanted food additives, excuse me. So ultimately, all that is going to help reduce your risk of a lot of chronic diseases and provide, a better source of protein for you.
In the
All right.
context of a faith community who's doing, a lot of churches, we have
Mhm.
meals and we, eat together all the time. So can you just go back one slide, just a second?
Mhm.
So I guess what you're saying is that we can make a shift potentially in some of the products that we use for the larger
Mhm.
church gatherings, I mean, but people like their bacon and their beans.
Mhm.
Just kind of the different ways. Maybe could you speak to what some of those swaps would potentially look like? Because I think some churches are like, listen, we're cooking for a large amount of people, so we need to go for what they think might be the lowest costing, like, the ground beef, like 98% is going to cost more than the 88% when they go to the grocery store. So can you just speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So the main thing the first thing I would think about is, okay, maybe in the short term, and this can be more individualized in the sense of how I'm explaining it. But in the short term, right, spending, money on a lot of these foods, can be, spending more money on food in the short term can be thought of like I'm saving money, right? But in the long term, you got to think about what is that going to do to your health and how much money you're going to end up spending on correcting those issues caused by some poor nutrition habits, right? So if we're ultimately eating one way for a long period of time and we start developing heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, maybe some cancers, diabetes, stuff like that. If we're developing those issues, how much money are we going to end up spending on correcting those, on medications, on doctor visits, right? How much money are we going to end up spending that way? Are you really saving money in the long run if you're trying to save money by, buying, more convenience option or more highly processed food, stuff like that, but in the long term, you're going to be spending more money in general on correcting for those poor habits, right? And then what I would also say for, if you're trying to save money on your protein items, choose things like your beans and legumes, right? So beans are a very healthy source of protein for you. They have a lot of vitamins and minerals. They have a lot of fiber, which, ground beef and, steak and chicken are not going to have that fiber. And that's something that we really lack in our American diet. So we want to get more of those things. And so that can be a cheap protein option that can take the place of, a lot of those meats that we purchase. And it's a very healthful item for you as well. Another thing you could do is talk about, if you want to still consume those products, maybe you cut them down with, add some other things added to it. For example, I'm gonna go to it later on. But with our burgers, for example, if burgers are something that you want to prepare, you can kind of half the amount of meat you're putting in and add maybe mushrooms into that as well, where you're still getting that kind of the texture and meat flavor from that meal, but you're cutting out half of that meat, right? And mushrooms are pretty cheap, so you can kind of, sub in and save a little bit of, the meat that you're using to spread it out a little bit more as well. So that's what I would say. That kind of answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
No
And
worries.
somebody put a question in the chat. Miss Burns said, would turkey bacon or turkey pepperoni be a good swap?
So that will be, since that's not a red meat, obviously that's going to be a little bit better, but it's still a highly processed meat, right? So it's still be probably something you want to eat less of. Those, your deli meats and stuff like that, all those are going to be, an extremely processed form of protein, So I would still consider eating that in moderation. Could have a lot of sodium, a lot of preservatives in it. So still do moderation, but that is, a step better than doing, regular pork bacon, right? So again, that's moving up the continuum, which is ultimately what I want you to do. So yeah, hopefully that answers their question.
And there's one more question. Are chicken burgers good?
Yeah. So that, again, that is, your white meat, you know what I mean? So that is a better option than a red meat burger or, beef burger, stuff like that. So that'd be a better option for sure. Any other questions?
All right. I think we are ready to move forward.
Awesome. All right. So let's move into swapping your fats, right? So again, just like most of the other things, it's on a spectrum, it's on a continuum, right? So we want to get less of our trans fats, our saturated fats. We want to get more of our unsaturated fats. So making little swaps here can help you out as well. So for example, let's say butter, like you like to, saute, your vegetables, or you sear your meats in some kind of, butter or animal fat. Those are going to have our saturated fats, which we want to get less of. They're not linked to a lot of health benefits, right? So our unsaturated fats are, however, they're linked to, improved, really full, like multiple aspects of your health, heart health, brain health, eye health, all that kind of stuff is unsaturated fats are fantastic for that. So we can make a swap there where we're not cooking things in butter, we're cooking them in things like olive oil, canola oil, stuff like that can be better options of what you can cook in. Or another sub could be, swapping out things like ranch dressing and stuff like that, which has a lot of saturated fat, and subbing things like our vinaigrettes. A lot of times, those, there's going to have, more of our unsaturated fats, which is going to be better for you. You also can make those dressings at home, right? So that's a quick sub right there. Olive oil and other unsaturated fats are heart healthy fats, and they're a key part of eating the med way. You make sure you're using, good judgment when you're choosing what fats we want to be mindful of what we're taking in, right? So things that are high in saturated fat are things like lard, our red meats that have a lot of marbling in them, like you see that steak there, Crisco, butter, our high fat dairies. Coconut oil is also a saturated fat. We want to get less of those as a whole and more of our unsaturated fats. And things like our nuts and seeds are going to be another great source of healthy fats. Salmon, other fatty fish like that are going to be great sources as well. We want to move up that continuum. So maybe, fish isn't really your thing. That's fine. Try, peanuts, walnuts, sunflower seeds, stuff like that. They're going to have our healthy fats in them. And we're ultimately moving towards that end of the spectrum as a whole, though. All right. And so swapping our fats, we want to make sure that we're really mindful of trans fats. They've been banned since 2020. So it's a lot easier actually to avoid those. But trans fats are fats that we can found in processed foods like fried foods, baked goods, and convenience foods and freezer food. But again, they've been banned since 2020. So you can find trace amounts in our food supply, but they're very much minimalized since then. All right, saturated fats or something that you really want to be mindful of. They're in a lot of our products, especially our animal products, or foods that have additives in them. They're generally found in animal products such as meat, butter, cheese, and milk. They're not shown to have a lot of health promoting properties, right? So we'll be mindful of how much we're consuming with that. We want to get more of our unsaturated fats. Right? You see on the little image above there, avocados. If you like avocados, those are a great source of unsaturated fat. Awesome. They're generally found in plant or seafood. And they're shown to have many health promoting properties. So making different swaps here can make a big impact on your health, right? And one thing to note is that a lot of times people think that fat in general, again, is the enemy. It's not. It's the type of fats. So we want to get more of our unsaturated fats. Just be mindful of, fat, whether it's unsaturated fat or saturated fat, both of them are going to have the same amount of calories. So just be mindful that even though we're choosing a healthy fat, overconsumption can lead to an increase in calories, which can ultimately lead to an increase in weight. So just be mindful of that. So even though we're saying fat is good, eat more than unsaturated fats. Just be mindful that if you take in 2,000 calories, but or you take in like 3,000 calories and you only burn 2,000 of that, that extra stuff is going to kind of end up adding up at the end. So just be mindful of staying in your calorie budget is what we say. All right. Making our grains whole. Again, we're continuing with this whole continuum idea, right? So we want to get more towards the, more whole form of the foods, right? So things like our sodas and our Pop-Tarts, pastries, refined grains like our white bread, crackers, stuff like that. Those are going to be our less healthy choices, right? So if we can move down the continuum, maybe, for example, you change out the white bread for whole wheat bread. That is a great option for you. So moving up that chain, right? And maybe you decide that, we talk about the healthy swaps. There can be little swaps within a meal that you can make. So there could be incremental changes. So if you're making a burger, for example, and you use a bun, maybe, one change you can make, like a little, step ladder changes you can make. Instead of having your standard burger, maybe you swap out the bun. Maybe that's the first thing you do. So you have a burger, instead of using a regular bun, use a whole wheat bun, right? And then maybe you get used to that and you're like, okay, I can make one more change. So you go from having whole wheat bun to subbing out the lettuce and putting spinach on it instead, right? That's two simple changes. You still having the burger, right? You still get the burger. The burger's cool, right? But you've made two healthy changes and you still get that out of your burger, right? And then maybe you get used to that. I can make another change. and you sub out half the meat and put in mushrooms in that burger, right? So you have a mushroom beef burger with spinach instead of lettuce, with a whole grain bun instead of, and you know, we're ultimately, each one of those changes is moving us closer and closer to the healthiest, you know, lifestyle we can live, right? So same thing here. So all these options on, excuse me, most of the options on this chart right here, they have a whole grain counterpart to them, right? So you've seen like, you know, our flour tortillas, right? Well, we can also find whole wheat tortillas as well, right? Or corn tortillas would be a good option as well. All right. We have our refined white pasta. You can find whole wheat pasta as well, or pasta made from other things. You know what I mean? So other whole grain products. So those can all be good options for you. All right. Rice as well. So white rice is a whole wheat, you know, or excuse me, a brown rice option. That'd be our whole wheat form of it. Or wild rice could be another option, or quinoa. So you can find counterparts that would move you up, you know, up the continuum to choosing better options as a whole. All right. So eat carbs and whole grains continued. We want to eat our grains as whole as possible. So we want to get our carbs from fruits, vegetables, and legumes, and unprocessed whole grains, minimally processed grains without added sugar. Foods made with whole grains without added sugar can be, you know, moving down the continuum. Ultimately, the option we want to get the least amount of our carbs from are foods made with refined grains and high added sugar. So we want to move as far away from that as possible. But each one of these stages can be incremental changes you can make to move up towards a healthier lifestyle, right? All right. So varying your fruits and veggies. All right, you want to make sure you choose a variety of fruits and vegetables of different colors and shades. The varying colors help to signify that each fruit and vegetable contains different nutrients. You want to get them however you can. So it can be fresh, frozen, canned, or dried, right? And it's important to vary your fruits and vegetables because, like I said, like it says in that statement, the colors kind of signify what nutrients you're getting from, you know, each one of these options, right? So you're not going to get the same things from blueberries as you're going to get from carrots. You know, there may be some similarities, but they're not going to be the same, right? They're all going to be different, right? And so it kind of speaks to the fact that we need a variety. We can't get everything we need from one particular food. We need a variety, right? So choose foods from, you know, reds, greens, blues, purples. Choose foods from each one of the colors. So that way we can get as many nutrients as we can, right? And all these foods, we want to make sure they're nutrient dense as possible.
We have one question in the chat.
Yeah.
Dorothy Mason, she's asking, where do grits fall in the refined grains continuum?
Yeah. So grits, that's actually a great question. I have to go look and see. But if I have to think about that. I actually haven't had grits in a long time. That's a fantastic question. Let me look at that and I'll follow up at the end of the presentation.
All right, thank you.
No worries. Let's see. All right, back to where I was. Varying our veggies and our fruits. Again, get them out however you can. And I don't know if anybody gets the pun, get them however you can, just can. I had to throw one pun in there. But yeah, so you get them canned, dried, frozen, or fresh, right? Canned is a great option. They're usually canned at the peak of freshness, so they maintain a lot of their nutrients. So that is a great option. Just be mindful of the sodium content of them. You can find some that have reduced amount of sodium or canned without sodium in them. If you do have some that have a lot of a sodium content, you can just rinse them off. That can reduce a great amount of that salt that's in that product. Dry can be a great option as well. Just be mindful of the added sugars, and also be mindful that since it's dried, it's going to be very concentrated in sugar, and it's easy to overeat those as well. So just be mindful that those can have a high sugar content. Frozen is another great option. You will also have to be mindful that it's sugar, added sodiums, and other ingredients that could possibly be added to it. And then fresh is always a great option as well. Make sure that you prep them in a healthy way though. So you can have these wonderful fruits and vegetables, but if you prep them in a way that adds a lot of saturated fat, a lot of sodium, a lot of added sugar, you're kind of ruining the whole idea behind that, right? So, but ultimately, all those can be great options for you. Choose whatever suits you. You can find a lot of these fruits and vegetables cheaper if they're in season. So be mindful of what's coming in season. If you can't find anything in season, maybe you opt for, a frozen option and maybe a little bit cheaper. The canned option could be cheaper as well. So, but all these are great options, but vary them. Try not to get try not to eat the same colors all the time. So vary your colors to make sure you're getting, as many nutrients as you can throughout your daily eating habits, right?
Yeah. We have another question in the chat. Ms. Burns said, is lettuce not good, or is spinach just a better choice?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So that's really what I was talking about with just making incremental changes. Lettuce is fine. Spinach is more nutrient dense, but lettuce is it's a vegetable. It's good for you. It is. It's all high water content, but spinach is a more nutrient dense option for you. So if you want to just move up the chain of that continuum, you can try spinach or kale or what have you. But those are more nutrient dense options. But lettuce is cool. It's cool. But moving closer and closer, if we can, to like just the more helpful options with that. So it's all continuum. Lettuce is fine though.
Can you just expand just a little on the idea of nutrient dense when a food is nutrient dense?
Yeah,
Why is that
absolutely.
important?
Absolutely.
What that is.
Yeah, so when we talk about nutrient density, we're talking about the amount of nutrients that are in a food compared to the amount of calories in that food. So we have foods like maybe a Pop-Tart, right? A Pop-Tart has a high amount of calories, a lot of added sugar, sodium, but it has a low amount of nutrients, our vitamins, our minerals, stuff like that, our fiber, all those things. So we want foods that have a lot of fiber, a lot of vitamins and minerals, right? And don't have a lot of calories attached to them, right? So things like, let's see, spinach would have, more vitamins and minerals in them than lettuce would, right? Or whole wheat bread would have more fiber and stuff like that than say a Pop-Tart would. So they're more nutrient dense without having, more nutrient dense for the amount of calories you're taking in. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. Am I missing any more questions?
No, we're caught up.
Cool. All right. Moving on to switching out your sugar and salt. Move this down. Got all y'all's wonderful faces covering my screen. Hold on a second. All right. So switching out our salt and sugar. All right. So we want to watch out for added sugar and salt. These things are linked to high blood pressure, increased risk of infection, blood clots, heart disease, gout, even tooth decay. So those things we want to be mindful of. And we can switch those out with our herbs and spices, right? We can use fruits to kind of sweeten our foods. We can use spices like nutmeg or cinnamon and stuff like that to enhance the natural sweetness found in different items, right? We can use things like oregano or thyme or turmeric or garlic powder to enhance the flavor of foods, right? Without adding a bunch of salt to them, right? So the recommendations would be that, sugar should be limited to between 6 and 9 teaspoons, 6 teaspoons for women, 9 teaspoons for men per day. But the average American consumes about 23 teaspoons per day, right? So we are way higher than what the general recommendation is, all right? And to specify, that's added sugar. So we're specifically talking about added sugar, not naturally found sugar. And that kind of goes back to the nutrient density quality that we were talking about. So when we go to things like, let's say blueberry jam versus blueberries, right? So blueberries would be the more nutrient dense option because it's not connected to, a lot of calories in that food. So the blueberry jam would be high calorie food and wouldn't be as nutrient dense, right? So, and it has a lot of added sugar in there. So we want to be mindful of how much we consume, in added sugar, and also amount of that we're consuming in our sodium as well. So the average person shouldn't consume more than about 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. The average American consumes 3,400. So that's a big jump. We want to bring that down as well. So again, we can sub out a lot of that added sugar and sodium for things like our spices, like our thyme or our oregano, our nutmegs, our cinnamons, our fruits that help flavor foods and stuff like that. So we can get the sweetness and enhance the saltiness of a food, the flavor of a food without adding a ton of salt to it, right?
We had a question in the chat. What about stevia and Splenda?
Yeah, so if you're someone who's wanting to, be mindful of the amount of sugar that they're taking in, those can be options for you. Just be mindful that over time, a lot of our sugar sweeteners tend to have they tend to taste sweeter than just sugar in general, right? So you can kind of get used to that hyper sweetness, all right? And then over time, once you get used to it, other foods don't taste as good. You know what I mean? So just be mindful, how much you're consuming and how used to it you get, because those can tend to taste a little bit sweeter than sugar itself, right? So then other foods don't taste quite as as good as you're used to them. It can just change the way your palate is. So just be mindful of that. But if you're wanting to watch your sugar, Splenda and stevia can work for sure. That make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, cool. All right. So instead of flavoring your foods with salt, herbs, spices, and acids and oils can be great options to help season and flavor your food. So I didn't mention acids and oils. Those are other great options to help enhance the flavor of your food. So you can use those in marinades, use those as sauces. You can help, change the dressings you put on your salad and use, acid, oil, vinaigrette type of mixture. And when I say acid, just to specify, I'm meaning things like our lemon juice, our vinegars, like our white wine vinegar, balsamic vinegars, red wine vinegar. All those things can be used to help flavor and enhance the taste of your foods. They can take the place of a lot of the salts that we add, right? And so salt should be thought of as kind of like an enhancer. It should be something that helps bring out the flavor a little bit, but it shouldn't be our main source of flavor for our food. So we're going to use the herbs and spices first, and then we'll have the salt to kind of help bring out a little bit more of that flavor, right? And make sure you're choosing foods that are low in added sugar to flavor, and you can flavor your dishes with fruits and spices to enhance the sweetness. All those will help cut down on added sugar, added sodium, but still help to flavor your food and make them, delectable and make you want to eat these foods. It helps with the aroma, all that kind of stuff. So again, be mindful of the amount of added sodium and the amount of added sugar that you have in your foods. Again, they're linked to a lot of negative health outcomes like heart disease, high blood pressure, stuff like that. And I want to point out on the bottom of the screen, I was talking about the amount of added sugar that we take in on a daily basis. Again, we want to make sure our added sugar is between 6 and 9, 6 for women, 9 for men. If you look at the bottom of that infographic right there, it says that 23 teaspoons of the amount of added sugar consumed by the average American. If you look to your right, you see one of your big gulps or whatever you can get from gas stations. There is 15 teaspoons of added sugar in that soda alone, right? So if you drink 2 of those, you're really getting up there at that point. And a lot of times, it's not unheard of for someone to go and get one of those and then come back and refill it. Like that's not unheard of. That happens, right? So we can get, pretty high amounts of added sugar. Sorry, my coworker came by. Added sugar, just by having two drinks, 2 sodas. We don't really think about that, but it can add up really quickly. All right. So a big part of healthy eating is reading your labels. It's a very important part of healthy eating. So everybody's probably seen a nutrition fact label before. If you look on any kind of boxed or packaged food, you'll see this label, right? So it's going to tell you basically what you're getting in that item, right? And it's going to tell you that coordinated to a certain amount of food. So a lot of times we don't actually pay attention to what these nutrition facts are connected to as far as quantity. And so we're going to dive into that a little bit and hopefully give you an idea of how to read these labels and how they can be used to help further your healthy lifestyle, right? So the first thing is the 5-20 rule. So anything 5% or lower is considered low, and anything 20% or higher is considered high, right? And that goes for both nutrients that we want to get more of and nutrients that we want to get less of, right? So we want to get more of things like our vitamins and minerals, our fiber, right? Things like that we want to get more of, right? So 20% or higher, that's showing that's a great source of those nutrients, right? Vice versa, if we're looking at things like our saturated fat or trans fat or cholesterol, things that we want to get less of, right? 20% or higher is showing that it's also really high in that. So maybe we should be thinking of a more healthful choice for us. This is also going to be great to help us determine, if we want to make another swap, right? So if you're choosing between say a whole wheat pasta and refined grain pasta, white pasta, maybe you look on the fat label and you're like, oh, this has more of the nutrients we want to get more of. That's a good swap, and we'll swap it out, right? So, and then also in between 5 and 20, that's about a moderate amount. So that's, it's not necessarily super high or super low. It's in the middle, right? And then again, looking at what nutrients you want to limit and what we want to get more of. We want to get less saturated fat, less trans fat, less sodium, less added sugar. We want to get more of our dietary fiber, our vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium. Those things are linked to more of our, our healthful food items, right? And then ultimately, we want to make sure we're paying attention to serving sizes and servings per container, right? So how many times have you guys sat down and maybe you start eating a bag of chips, right? And then one turns into 25, right? That can be an issue, right? But one thing you got to think about is that the serving size for chips, it may have been, I don't know, 8 to 10 chips may have been a serving size for it. I'm just throwing something out there. If you're eating 30 chips, 40 chips, a whole bag, you got to look at that nutrition fact label and say, like, if one serving is 200 calories, if I'm getting like multiple times that amount, that's getting up really quickly, right? And a lot of times what we do is we eat more than we actually need to. We eat more than the actual serving. Yeah. For example, I don't know if it still is. They might have changed it recently. But at a period in time, Pop-Tarts, it's still packaged in two, but they used to be that it was one serving was one Pop-Tart. Nobody eats one Pop-Tart, right? So you may look at the nutrition fact label and like, oh, okay, this is not actually that bad. It's only, such and such, of my daily value of sugar, of saturated fat, of cholesterol. It's not that bad. But then you got to think, oh, I ate 2 servings. You may think you only ate 1, but you ate 2 servings. So that's double that. So if it say it was 20%, that's still high, right? 20% of our daily value of saturated fat. But if we double it, that's 40%. That's almost half, right? So let's be mindful of that, right? And then don't forget the ingredients list. So this can also help you determine what's in your food, and if you want to make a little swap here and there. The ingredients on the nutrition fact label are listed in order of weight, right? So what makes up the bulk of that product by weight? So things that are listed first are going to make up the most of that product. And as you move down the list, they'll get incrementally less, right? So if you have something that first ingredient is sugar, or first 3 ingredients, or, within that first few ingredients is sugar, maybe you're like, I don't know, maybe I should back off on that. Or maybe the first few ingredients is, honey or molasses or whatever. So those are all added sugars. You want to be mindful that those may not be the best options for us. So reading your nutrition fact label and help, I can help you determine if I need to consume this product, or maybe I can find a healthier option for me, right? And then make sure you're looking on the nutrition fact label to see the daily percentages as well. So again, 20% is high, 5% is low, right? So a quick quiz. Do y'all think, looking at this nutrition fact label, that this is something that you would want to take home and eat?
I can't quite, let me change my view. Oh, what?
Sodium content is huge.
Oh, yeah.
And cholesterol, is heavy.
That's
Fat,
the thing, Lise.
it's very fat. I don't know.
Oh yeah. So you see, first off, if you look at the total fat, that's 94% of your daily value in one serving.
Yeah.
94, right? The cholesterol right there is at 50% of your daily value. I mean, it's relatively high in dietary fiber, like it's almost at 20%. So maybe you see a win there, but ultimately probably not the best option for you. Probably not. And I want to go back to the question about the grits. Grits are a whole grain. So
Oh,
go for it. However, if you ate grits like I grew up eating grits,
Butter on
cheese.
butter,
I
or you
mean,
could be
it's real good.
the other, because there's two ways. I've learned through a lot of Twitter and Instagram debates. There's two ways to eat grits. It's either a lot of sugar or a lot of salt, right? There's one or two ways. If you're on the sugar end, still not great. Salt end, not great. But either way, you're probably adding butter, probably adding some kind of either added sugar or salt. Those are all things that we want to get less of. So grits, go for it. Just be mindful of how you cook it. All right. So
Thank you.
no worries. In the nutrition fact label. So again, pay attention to all that. Be mindful of the 520 rule, be mindful of the ingredients list, right? And make the best decision for you. Okay. And so again, healthy eating is on a spectrum. So, I know somebody that's on I forgot her name, but she used to, coin the term healthy-ish, right? So we have like our unhealthy foods, we have our healthy-ish foods, and we have our healthy foods. That can help you kind of think about the concept I'm trying to convey right now. So, I'm trying to just move y'all up the chain, choose healthier items. You may not be able to completely change the way you're eating, at least maybe not right off the bat, right? Maybe if you made like the complete change where you're eating, salads and grilled chicken every day or whatever, you make that change, you're like, I can't do it. I can't maintain that, right? So making little incremental changes can add up to a huge diet change at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, if you took, instead of frying your chicken, right, where you're adding a lot of fat to them, and a lot of times, unsaturated fat as well, right? And you're adding, sodium to them. It's probably breaded in something which is a refined grain. So, a healthier option would be our baked chicken, which incorporates, this picture right here incorporates a lot of the little changes that we want to make, right? So it's going to be a flavor of herbs and spices, and I'm pretty sure there's lemons on there, right? So those are going to be ways to flavor our food without adding a lot of sodium, right? It's baked instead of fried. So that can be a good change, right? And then, an incremental change may be that maybe you can't jump from doing fried chicken to doing baked chicken. An incremental change could maybe be that maybe you bread the chicken, but you bake it, right? So that's like a little change. But then maybe next time you bake the chicken without breading it, right? And then you're moving, further and further up that chain, right? So those are all incremental changes that you can make, right? For the burger right here, standard burger, you got your cheese on it, your lettuce, tomato, your onion, right? I talked about earlier, one quick change you can make is changing the bun. So instead of using a white wheat bun, right, you use a whole wheat bun, right? Maybe you change out the lettuce for spinach, right? If you want to go, completely on the other end, maybe you go ahead and sub out, half that meat and use mushrooms, and then you add spinach, and then you add tomato, then you change the bun, right? But each one of these changes is ultimately moving you in the right direction. So maybe you just make one change, and then a few weeks you make another change, and then ultimately over the course of time, you're making a bunch of changes and you're not even noticing it. All right. Another quick change is butter and our saturated fats. Change them for our unsaturated fats, like our olive oils or canola oil or avocado oil, or grapeseed oil, vegetable oils. All those things are going to be better options than your butter, right? So that's a quick option you can make. You can use that for roasting. You can use it for sauteing, stir frying. You can do pretty much all the cooking methods you were going to use for the butter with your unsaturated fats, right? Another quick change, your dressings, right? A lot of times, I grew up everybody in my family, in my household, ate ranch. Like that was the end all be all. My dad would always say, like, he would order a salad, they'd bring him ranch, and he'd be like, "Can I get an extra ranch?" every time, without fail. So, we're used to that. But making a little change there would be, trying a vinaigrette. You know what I mean? Those are going to be more of our unsaturated fats, right? And then maybe you move on to making your own vinaigrette at home, which is super simple. All you need is an acid, an oil, and then whatever spices you want, right? So you can make those pretty simple at home. This is the incremental change. So little changes here and there. You still have your salad or whatever whatever you're going to put the dressing on, but maybe you try, a vinaigrette instead. All right. Another quick healthy swap. There's multiple swaps going on with the first one. So we have our fine grain pasta, right? There's some sort of meat in there, and then a cheese sauce. If we want to make a change, one simple change would be changing the pasta, whole wheat pasta instead of our white wheat pasta, right? Quick change. Another change could be that you add some veggies in there, like you see there. Maybe you change one or two things, right? Maybe you add some veggies into the pasta next time you make it. Maybe you change the noodles, whatever, right? You also can maybe, instead of using a cheese sauce, which probably has a lot of sodium in it, probably has a lot of saturated fat, right? Maybe you use some kind of olive oil, dressing or something like that to go on your pasta sauce or go on your pasta. So you get little changes, but you can make multiple changes between the first picture and the second, but picking little ones to move your way up the chain can ultimately lead to a healthier lifestyle. If you have like some kind of rice dish that you're making at home, right? Using wild rice instead of white rice. Quick change, easy change, right? And then finding, little changes here and there with your fruits and vegetables. So, instead of lettuce, you choose spinach. Instead of peaches and syrup, you choose whole peaches. A quick change that's in between choosing peaches canned in syrup and then whole peaches would be choosing peaches that are canned in its own fruit juice or water, right? Lower added sugar, right? But maybe it's still more convenient. Maybe the convenience factor is what helps you out. So if you try to do, if you wanted to move up the chain, but you can't do peaches. Like it's like you have to cut them off. You have to cut them open and slice them. That's what's going to make it accessible to you. You couldn't, that's too much work for you. Maybe canned peaches could work. Just be mindful how they're prepared, right? If they're in a lot of syrup, a lot of added sugar, that could be an issue. More healthy swaps are going back to our added sugar and salt. Using salt as an enhancer and making sure that the main bulk of your flavoring is coming from herbs and spices, right? So that's a quick change there. Then you do that in a variety of different dishes. Instead of soda, you choose fruit infused water, right? Or maybe that's not a big jump you can make. Maybe choosing like grape juice or apple juice. I mean, it's still going to be relatively high in sugar, all right? But juice can be considered a serving of fruit or vegetable. So that is a change you can make. Maybe you replace your sodas with fruit juice. Then maybe eventually you replace your fruit juice with drinking more, drinking fruit infused water every once in a while. Just subbing out some of the beverages you drink with that. Maybe if you still need some kind of sweetness, but you want to get more water, maybe you try coconut water, which has a little bit of sweetness to it, and you flavor it with, grapes or strawberries or grapefruit or whatever. Again, all these are incremental changes you can make to move up. And then final thoughts, like I said at the beginning of this presentation, is that much of what I brought to you guys today is from a program through NC State Extension called Med Instead of Meds. All right, this diet has been linked to many health benefits. If you look over to the right, eating the med way decreases your risk of some forms of cancer, is more effective than a low-fat diet for weight loss. It protects against cognitive decline by protecting the blood vessels, 40% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's. It improves eye health, decreases risk of type 2 diabetes, can help manage blood pressure, reduce your overall risk of cardiovascular disease. So a lot of these concepts are being pulled from the Mediterranean style of eating, right? So if you are interested in taking this class, quick plug, find your agent in your local county. All right. If you're in Rockingham County, that's me. But find your local extension agent, and reach out to them and ask if they would be interested in providing this class to either you or to, community setting that you're in. Or if you have, a group of people that may be interested, maybe they can provide that class on site. But reach out and let them know you're interested in the program. And yeah, this could be a great learning opportunity for you and the people in your surroundings. So yeah, with that being said, thank you guys. Any questions?
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Jordan. We are running right up on the hour, so it's a good thing we're doing questions during your presentation. But does anybody else have any other questions? Tanisha did put in the chat, Tanisha Armstrong, she's the Pitt County agent for the North Carolina Cooperative Extension, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Tanisha's awesome.
there's-
Go to Tanisha. And I see my friend Natina Drummond is in here. She is there she is. Natina, we have known her for how many years now? It's been a while. It's been like since 2018. She's the GOAT. So if you are interested in any nutrition education programming, go to her. Are you teaching youth and adult now, or is it just youth?
Youth and adult.
Youth and adult. So go reach out to her. She's a fantastic resource. So I think Jennifer's on here as well. Jennifer is in Person County. She might have left by now. But she's another agent. So if you're in Person County, reach out to her. But yeah, if you're interested in the program, find your local extension agent and or their counterparts. We have FNEP. So Natina does FNEP. So they're great resources as well. And so they have some different programming that they can do. She mentioned Teen Cuisine in the chat. So that's a great choice if you have some kids that want to get in the kitchen and learn some good nutrition habits. That's a great program as well. But yeah, reach out to your extension office. They have a lot of great resources for you. If not for a class, reach out to them for maybe some resources. Please check out the Medicine of Meds website. They have a lot of tips on healthy swaps, a lot of recipes, and they have webinars that you can watch that kind of take you through the entire med way of eating. And so if you don't want to take a class, at least you can get that information still without taking the full-on course.
Yeah, we will send out, as we usually do after any of these webinars, we'll send out a copy of the recording, and we will also send out any links to any websites, for example, any of the ones that Jordan was mentioning. We will send those out in our follow-up email to everyone. So we ran right up to the hour. Thank you very much, Jordan, Jeffries James. That was excellent. Partners in Health and Wholeness will be working maybe to potentially do kind of a healthy swab taste testing, getting a group of churches together to kind of do that in different geographical areas. So keep your eyes out for that. And let me do announcements real quick. Oh, I need to go back. So just one quick announcement. If you are on our mailing list, you would have gotten a notice earlier this week about how our program is changing, how our grant programs are changing, and we're going to be doing what we're calling PHW 201, PHW Evolving. We're going to be doing a webinar on Wednesday, May 31st at 11 a.m. and you can register for that information, or you can email us if you're not on our mailing list and would like to get the information. And as always, you can always visit our website. We're going to be adding a lot of the resources that have been shared as a part of the Food and Faith series on our interactive resource map. So you can look for you can sort things by healthy eating or physical activity and that sort of thing. And so we'll be updating the map with a lot of the resources that have been shared. As always, you can always find us on Facebook and YouTube, as well as Instagram. A PHW tradition, we might be running up against time today. So Partners in Health and Wholeness tradition, just closing out our time together. We're going to take 3 deep breaths and then you can unmute yourselves. I'm going to count off the first breath and then you count the other 2 for yourself, kind of ground yourself in the moment. I'd encourage you to just be thankful for the body that you're in. for the ways that we can come together and eat, for the ways that we can take care of each other when we do eat together. So I'm going to count off the first deep breath, and then you count the other two, and you can unmute yourselves to say goodbye at the end. 1. Amen. Thank you all for showing up today. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jordan.